ahead and get started then.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, welcome back to Stable Discussion. It's been 3 months, maybe?
It was December we did last.
Yeah,
it's end of February now. So just like 2.5 months or so.
2.5 months, yeah.
A lot's happened in 2.5 months.
It has.
Yeah.
A ton has happened.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, yeah. We were coming in at March, but, that's just how things work sometimes.
Yeah, things are quiet in the tech world usually between the end of December and beginning of March, so...
True. Yeah. And we both took a little bit of time off, too.
Yeah. I'm going to be gone again in a week, too, so I'm gone over to the Caribbean.
Yeah,
so
that sounds awesome.
I'll come back next time tanned if we shoot a video shortly after. We'll see.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, hey, sunburn, that would be brutal. I gotta say.
Cross my fingers. No sunburn.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I mean, where to start?
Let's do a quick Cole's note of the things that have happened since our last discussion. Just a quick over the top.
Okay. I'm gonna start with something completely random. MidJourney 6.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of MidJourney, and the 6th iteration of that is really great to use.
Incredibly good photorealism, just like absolutely, I think next level. I've never, there's nothing comes close. I feel like in general.
Yeah.
I mean, you see a bit of that inside of I think, like DALLE 3.
Yeah.
And DALLE 3 is like pretty close.
Yeah.
But MidJourney 6, I think, isn't just doing it like photorealistically. It's also doing it very stylistically.
Right.
So, this is the internal battle with any kind of image creator is that you don't want to just make things look like what you ask for.
Yeah.
You want to make them look good.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and they've done a lot. I mean, they're iterating on especially even their dev tooling in a way. So they're thinking a lot about how to, help creators work on their prompting. So they have prompt debugging and stuff like that coming in too. But yeah, that's MidJourney. I think in terms of image creators, DALLE 3 had come out. So
it was quite fresh at that point.
But it's gotten better significantly. I think over time.
We all play with it. Its integration to ChatGPT is pretty smooth.
Pretty amazing. Yeah.
Okay, one thing I kind of really think about when it comes to image generators is that I think it's finally maturing to the point in which they've only been out in any kind of API format and like functionality for 2 years. Year and a half.
Yeah. I mean, before that, it was rough.
Yeah, it was rough.
It
wasn't usable, right?
Yeah.
And so we're at the point now where it's getting faster. A lot of the really quick ones, like the SD, what is it, XL Turbo, or they have a name for it.
Yeah.
Turbo in my head is language models, but maybe also it's the same name for the Stable Diffusion.
Yeah.
But the real time, I think we talked about this last time. The real time generation of things is quite impressive.
Yep.
And that's not just impressive because it's cool, but there's use cases to that fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
If you don't care so much about the best quality, but you want something quick, that's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Imagine I'm trying to think of a good example. Imagine that you are generating some kind of a game, whatever it is, and you have these picture frames on the wall, and you want those frames to change dynamically depending on what the user does.
Yeah.
You don't want to go out, spend a minute getting the picture and then put it back in.
Sure.
They press a button and then something changes. That's a cool, different experience.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads us to the more recent changes, which is video.
Yeah.
And video in multiple formats. So there's one, OpenAI's Sora is the big one.
Runway had it's been out for a little while now, but they've added new functionality features their new action brushes. So you can say, I'm going to go this way with my dog walking down the street, or I'm going to go that way with the flower blooming, whatever it may be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I even saw, even the 3D model generation is actually getting pretty good too.
Stable Diffusion has some of that. In fact, this is the big thing about. We're going to jump ahead a little bit here and touch on Stable Diffusion 3. Stable Diffusion 3 came out, I think, only 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Not even that long ago.
Yeah.
But what's interesting about that is a lot of the underlying image generator stuff that's happening, the newer generations of stuff, are sharing some fundamentally similar underlying technology. I saw Imad Mostaf or Mostique. I can't remember his last name. I'll look it right now. Mostak.
Okay.
Yeah, Mostaque. He was talking on Twitter.
CEO of Stability AI.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
He was talking on Twitter about what's cool about SD3 and sort of the similarities it has to Sora actually.
Right.
He's saying there's some underlying similar technology so that SD3 could do video as well because they have this new mechanism for tokenizing a frame.
Right.
Before frames were just about diffusion models.
Yeah.
But if you have a tokenized frame,
Yeah.
you can then scale on not just the frame, but the frame's relationship to other frames.
Right.
Which is like, next word prediction kind of thing, right?
Right.
So this is how they get the temporal consistency that you see in Sora. I mean, supposedly they don't talk about. There's no paper. You don't get papers anymore for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You get like a
really.
quick technical report, and it's like, this is kind of what we're doing. That's all you're gonna know. But people can kind of derive a lot from that, and
Right.
there's there's SD3 that can do videos and do 3D models. There's Sora. There's a couple of Google things that have come out. You know how Google is with their stuff.
Yeah.
Research papers, like quick little page, Lumiere, and they have other couple ones like Video Poet. I think there's another one that's really interesting. Trying to make like their own stuff. I mean, a lot of the technology that you see inside of like all the big shops are derived from Google research.
Yeah.
So like that's the kind of nice thing with Google. They kind of put all this research.
Yeah.
And they can't really productize it that well.
Yeah.
they have the research at least behind it.
Yeah. But I do think like the one place where, and like this is kind of like coming full circle now. So it's like we have this amazing like image generation capability expanding, becoming like more coherent, more quick, going into like even high quality video with Sora. But then now we're kind of like intaking that video back into an LLM.
Yeah.
And that's with like this multimodal kind of understanding of things, and that's with now Gemini.
Yeah.
Which is Google's kind of like first, I would say, major entry into chat again.
This is the first real attempt after their new like change in their AI efforts.
Right.
They have my favorite Demis Hassabis.
Yeah.
Hassabis. I can never say his name.
Yeah.
I never say it out loud. That's a problem. But like he's the CEO of DeepMind.
Yeah.
He's like this really cool dude. Yeah. He's now the CEO. That's a term for Google. Google DeepMind, which is Google Brain combined with DeepMind.
Right.
So Google Brain is where all the really cool research has come out of for a very long time.
Yeah.
Transformers came out of there. Nerf came out of there. The list goes on and on, actually.
Right.
And then you have DeepMind, which has their own cool research, but they're a little better. Like kind of, I think the throughput with them.
Right.
They're not making as many products, but they make some really cool things. Like they made the AlphaGo series of stuff. They made
Right.
AlphaFold, which is actually used by researchers in real world.
Right.
They made more of those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Alpha geometry, some other cool things, material science stuff, other stuff with like medical stuff.
Yeah.
So they're doing really, really valuable research. And so is Google Brain.
Yeah.
So the combination I hope will, and it looks like it is, because it'll help like drive them forward better into product space.
Right.
1.0 for Gemini came out like end of last year,
Right.
like December of last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were talking about it maybe coming out when we were talking last.
Yeah.
And then just very recently, they're talking about 1.5.
Right.
And 1.0 was okay for the Pro. They have, for those who don't know, they have Nano, Pro, and Ultra. Very confusing.
Yeah.
Nano is the smallest model. It's a 7B model, I think.
Right.
Should fit on like a lot of like computers or like even a smartphone. I think they have a 2B Nano, I think, even as well. And the 7B, 2B stands for the parameter count, which gives you an idea of how big it is, which means that if it's too big, you can't run on a computer. It has to be run on a server.
Yeah.
So the small ones that come on a computer, they're not going to be as good, but you can actually use them on your device locally.
Right.
So they have their Nano series. They have their Pro, which is the middle of the ground one, which is like really, it's like kind of like their 3.5
Yes.
scale model.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they have their Ultra, which is like their 4 scale model.
Right.
So the Ultra was very interesting for me. The first thing I tried it for was code, and I wasn't very happy with its coding. Its coding was okay sometimes, but it didn't really understand a lot of what I wanted, and it was way too agreeable with me.
Right.
Weirdly, that's kind of annoying with LLMs.
It's always the worst, actually. Yeah.
It's like, don't agree with me. I don't think I'm right. I'm not sure. It's like, oh, you're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I'm like, no, don't agree with you on that.
No, yeah, exactly. It's like I have a backbone. Like, yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah, I definitely found like I try and like put models through their paces sometimes, and the one thing I often try and do is like, hey, I'm having this sort of like debate, or I'm trying to come up with like a strategic approach to something, and I find that these models absolutely suck at that.
Yeah.
Sorry,
You can hear my dog grabbing a bone.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to be loud until he puts it down and chooses somewhere quietly,
Yeah.
but it'll happen. There he goes. Okay, cool. Yeah. Like you put it through the paces, and like a lot of the tests I think you do are all about like trying to ensure that it's able to actually like critique and challenge you to some degree, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, especially where I'm like coming from too, is like, I want that critique, I want that challenge, I want that LLM to sort of give something that's like really like usable in a way. And it's like tricky. Like oftentimes what we're looking for is like a search engine query. So we just want like, hey, just give me information. And information is something I think it's like very easy to be helpful. But say you're somebody who's like doesn't enjoy conflict, right? And I'm giving you a critique on like something you did. Like say you gave a presentation, and you're like, tell me what you really thought of my presentation, right? There's a tactful way to do that is high touch. It depends a lot on the person, how to give that feedback. It depends a lot on what kind of feedback you're trying to give. And I find that LLMs really err on the side of like, let's not have conflict.
Yeah.
You know, and that's never the most helpful.
No. It's very important to critique when you want to help somebody out. Especially as somebody who's asking you help with something that they're not confident about. It's like, I'm not confident about things. Yeah. So whatever I'm suggesting to you isn't inherently right. In fact, it could be wrong. Push back. Yeah. Have a backbone. Yeah. Tell me to think differently. And GPT-4 is better than Ultra on this and Gemini in general. It's still not as good as I'd like it to be, but it was really nice seeing that comparison. And sometimes it pushes back on things you don't want it to. Where it's like, hey, can you make me a scary story where someone like is murdered? You know? Normal Goosebumps level like scary stories are like nothing crazy. It's like, well, I don't know if I can tell you a scary story. Murder is very bad. Like, I know murder is bad. I'm not trying to ask you to help me murder somebody. I'm asking you to write me a story about murder. God. Right. Hey, buddy. Come here. Want to be in the shop real quick? My dog's going to complain a bit. It's fine.
He's like, hey, snack time.
You just had a snack. Just ignore him. He'll be fine. Okay, long story short. LLMs, I feel like, in general, are... Might have to cut this out.
Yeah, we might have to.
So one thing that's very interesting to me about LLMs overall in general is that, they really are making you think more about what it is you really want for someone to help you.
Right.
You kind of just assume like be helpful is good enough, but be helpful means a million different things and to different people and to different like environments and contexts. So I think we're kind of realizing this a bit. Yeah. But this is the nice thing I can say about Ultra in general is that I practiced some creative writing with it. Yeah. It's great at creative writing. Really. In fact, I was like playing around with a book idea in my head for a little bit. And I was like, what would that look like with GPT-4 a while ago, like to help me? GPT-4 has this problem with creative writing where it's like, and then Mary, like, story about Mary. Mary had a hard day. She went to the bank, and then she had a problem, but then she solved the problem, and she lived happily ever after. Always the same formulaic, like, she marries a character, she does this thing, she has a problem, she overcomes the problem, happily ever after. Right. If you try to give it to, like, tell it to anything else, even something scary, happily ever after.
Right. It's interesting because then, like, it's fine a little bit because I think even though it's formulaic, you could take things from that for use, but the author has to like kind of like look at what it generated and then pull apart the pieces that might work for you. Yeah. Like I use it for D&D sometimes. Yeah. So it's like, okay, come up with a plot line. And then I kind of like look at it and I'm like, okay, I mean, yeah, that looks like a D&D plot line. Yeah. And like it's pretty generic. And like that's kind of okay for D&D because like the whole point is that you respond to characters, right?
Yeah, like the characters are writing your story. You're giving them a skeleton. Yeah. So generic is like ideal for that.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of nice from a creative writing perspective in that way because you're like, cool, I have this now generic story, and it's generic enough that now if I do a twist on it or I change it, it's kind of like maybe easier to follow than a completely novel story or idea.
Yeah, depending on what and then your process is, depending on what you're trying to do, this is again part of the same problem. It's like, what does help look like for me, right?
Yeah, true. But yeah, going back, it's
Ultra. Yeah. I try to. Okay, so one of my fun experiments with any model is like write me a story from the perspective of a very alien feeling of some event happening. I did one recently. I was like from the perspective of an alien having to like deal with them being invaded by aliens. Some weird, very weird but somewhat relatable thing, and it was great. Or like try a different kind of story, or like some of the book I was writing, like here's what I'm writing with my book. Right. What are your thoughts? Give me your feelings. Give me your critiques. What can I do with this? And it was incredibly good at that. Yeah. It was like I can see what you're doing here. I can see the connection. It feels like this genre and that genre. I'm like, correct. Those are those very niche genres I'm working with.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well then this feels like it's a good connection to combine the antagonist with the protagonist, but kind of like, give you this sort of like, who's the real villain kind of vibe, but not too overt. And I was like, great, that's actually quite interesting. Anyway, like it was quite good at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So this is making me think more about models in general. It's like, as they get trained, it's like, I don't want to say people, but it's like people. Two people who are both programmers or who are both writers.
Yeah.
Can both write, can both do things, but they'll do differently. They can be equally proficient even if that's the case.
Right.
Let's assume they're like they solve tests at the same level, hypothetically speaking. You might like one more than the other.
Yeah.
Something connects with you more, something behaves with you more.
Right.
And I feel like we'll get more and more of these because the baseline quality that we have for models right now is probably still, like the majority of them are average around like GPT 3.5 level, which is useful but not super duper useful.
Right.
They're getting better.
Right.
They'll hit 4 soon. The baseline in a couple of years will be around 5.
Right.
As things go on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then you'll have like probably a cornucopia of models at that point that are all quite proficient and all unique in their own little ways. So it'll be really fascinating to see how that kind of plays out overall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean that's the unique thing. I think I just put out a video. By the time we're watching this, it'll be out. But I just put out a video talking about how Gemini increases this like context window size. And the thing that's really cool about like Gemini is so it'll be able to take any kind of context length and be able to handle that within itself, right?
Yeah.
So you could give it like a massive book, right? But say that book has commands in it. Like it's a book about military or something like that. And so it's like saying like, hey, like do this, not that, or something like that. And then you're trying to also give it commands about that reference, right?
I really wonder how that'll mess up. That'll mess up its overall ability. Yeah, like these are the tests people are running right now on Twitter. Really interesting tests to see how it can navigate things. I don't think anyone's tried that test. That'd be a good test.
Yeah.
To see if you seed in basically like prompt hacking into the model itself.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah. So.
Cool.
So
we have a dog.
You can see right there.
Hello.
We have to pause to let him come up, sit next to Ben. He loves Ben.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Very
Well,
nice.
I know why he loves Ben. Ben's great.
Yeah.
Um,
and I have I'm hard to get as a dog attention seeker. It's hard for me to give attention to a dog, so they're attracted to that.
Yeah, of course. It's being hard to get is very, very attractive.
Yeah, it really is.
Look at him just looking at you. Okay, yeah. So as we're saying, like I feel like the testing I'm seeing on the internet for these models right now, testing out all the different like strengths. And to give you some context, so Gemini, I mentioned there's Nano, Pro, and Ultra. There's now 1.5. Fast follow, very quick. And this is on the 1.5 for Pros, what they've shown so far, which is their middle line one. And it's quite good. The benchmarks have kind of matched, at least for text, what Ultra was.
Yeah.
Exceeded even a little bit in some places. And people have been using them for a while, and on that level, it seems to be quite good. Apparently, it's better at coding than Ultra is, which makes me happy. But the fascinating thing about it is the context length.
Right.
1 million tokens.
Yeah, it's huge.
A lot of people are talking about this as a rag killer. I have my own feelings about this, but I want to hear your feelings on. I don't want you to tell me what you think. I want you to tell me why you think people think it's a rag killer first.
Oh, I think. So largely, the things people are using RAG for are somewhat trivial, I would say, in general. I would think like everyone's kind of building a knowledge base. Well, hello, this is a microphone. Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
So I think the reason that everyone's thinking that this is a RAG killer is because largely it's because there's a sort of like semblance of like what this is for in a way, and it's largely currently being used as a kind of overview of user data. So it's just like, cool, this is just for user data. It's just to find documents that users have already used in a way. Or you're just looking over like a few PDFs, right? There's just not enough data there in a way. And I think the thing that changes it, like almost like significantly, is like itself. So like, so 1.5 adds the ability to bring in audio, video via it takes like it takes one image per second effectively, and pulls that out as an image feed, right? And so it can do up to an hour of video. It can do several hours of audio. It can do a lot of text. And so what you're going to see is now your kind of RAG data store is more complex, right? That RAG data store is now multimodal.
Yeah.
And that changes things on top of that, right? So I think there's this idea that it's like a RAG killer. I think the idea that this context window could get bigger is like also sort of in that same vein of things.
They did the experiment with a 10 million token context
under
window.
research.
Yeah. They're saying it's not out for public yet, maybe in the future.
Yeah.
Probably in the future.
Yeah.
We've already seen it go from, like, what was it when we started? Like 8,000 tokens?
Yeah.
Not even, it was like 4,000 tokens.
4,000, yeah. It was really small.
4, then 8, then 16, then 32, then it just went from 32 to like
10, 128.
Yeah. And, you have some 200s. But those ones weren't really the best kind of RAG quality.
Yeah. Well, we did see, Anthropics specifically had like really challenging times with data retrieval.
Yeah. They're probably doing some clever tricks to kind of make that all fit, but it's not perfect. Sometimes you kind of like lose some information. The size increases haven't always just come with like a quality increase necessarily.
Yeah.
Like you got quite big, and then suddenly you'd have like 200k token length. A lot of stuff lost in the middle. Yeah. It seems like this 1 million one technique that they have using something called ring attention. I think is the big deal. I saw another paper coming out. I think it's out of Stanford or it was Berkeley. I can't remember which one it was. They had one called large world model. Let's see. Yep, Berkeley. Okay. And they also have like a 1 million token length over here. Let me share it on my screen so we can kind of see that. I think there are.
And 1 million is like 700 pages. So, there are some books that still won't fit in 1 million tokens.
Yeah.
It's unlikely that definitely if you're just doing a chatbot, you're probably going to be fine forever.
Well, look at this paper real quick, just kind of maybe get us some grounding. Yeah. This paper and this like discussion here is about like changing the idea of these large models from being large language models to being large world models.
Right.
Because there's an increasing discussion about multimodality.
Yeah.
It's not just about like a book anymore.
Right.
It's about audio. It's about video. It's about a combination of all these things.
Right.
And you have to really consider how much space these each take. And the amount of frames you want to spend for a video, for example. There's a lot more effort actually. As much as it seems like it's almost like simplifying it, like here's 1 million tokens, put whatever on there, really it complicates it. Yeah. Because the constraint of having only 8,000 tokens is like, cool, I can put some text in there. That's basically it. Yeah. Maybe a couple of pictures if I really try, and this is multimodal, and they weren't back then. But now it's like, cool, 1 million, and it's probably gonna keep going up. Yep. There's more I can put in there. I can put in probably actions. I can put in like eventually probably just streaming data of like my computer's like byte information if I really want to, right? Yeah. And that's really going to kind of, as much as we think of this as all being a way to simplify our functionality and our ability to like throw a whole book in there for context, or throw something that would normally require like chunking and like RAG clever like embedding and what have you. For sure it simplifies that. Yeah. But it also opens up so many doors that we're just adding a new kind of RAG system. Right. One thought I have, for example, is I really want to see if this works, is that how good is the ICL? That's in context learning. Before you'd see this often with like 5-shot prompting. Would give you like 5 examples of what you want, right? And say, now do my own thing. That's in context learning in a sense, right? You're teaching it with a couple examples. Right. What happens if you can teach it with like 100,000 examples? What happens when you teach it with like 2 or 3 books, a textbook here or there? Does that actually impact the quality of the output? And if so, how much is it quality of the output? I think that'll be a really fascinating thing. If hypothetically you giving it a diverse set of, like, maybe not 100,000 examples or like 1,000 examples of the same thing, maybe let's say 2,000 examples of like a diverse set of things. Yeah. Can be more valuable.
I think also you could end up with these interesting systems where, say I'm working on, I don't know, I'm trying to build like a bookshelf, right? And I'm asking it about details about building a bookshelf. I've included some like schematics about building it. I'm trying to kind of like construct my own schematics, and so I'm like working through these sort of like ideas. some of the context that it could build for like in context learning is like kind of like sub processes or like side processes potentially, right? So I think one of the easiest in context learnings is just the chat that you've already had, right? The user's kind of going through some conversation with the AI. You have these kind of like references to sort of like what the user really wants, and it's getting feedback kind of constantly from that, and that works. But then, okay, on top of that, are there ways that we could like spin up other thinking that relates to this, right? Summarize, like I mean, simple example is like, okay, summarize the conversation into like what are the key points and takeaways, right? Or
And you put the whole conversation in there if you want.
absolutely, yeah. You could put the whole conversation in there, but I think the summarizing is actually really important because it's like, it. One thing is that you kind of read the conversation and you understand that this entire conversation has happened. The other point is that you've analyzed it and gotten clear takeaways in a specific domain.
Yeah.
Right.
And I see where you're going. Like literally, like you could have like these subtasks spin up and say, I'm gonna go summarize this information, and I'm gonna say, from the summary, also include what your conclusions are of what the right next steps are.
Right.
You know, you do that from summarization. Right.
And you might not give that to the user right away.
No.
You may keep that as like a background process or something that like you will eventually dole out to the user, but you're checking your work as you're having this conversation with the user, right?
Yeah.
There's sort of like that approach, which is interesting.
Yeah. There's again, this is to the point. Like, we could just like pontificate for like hours about what you could do with this.
Yeah,
and there's so many interesting things you can do with this.
Yeah, because I mean that's probably the coolest aspect of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is really that it's like if you learn a little bit about this and you have like your own kind of take on it that's specific to sort of like your knowledge, your domain, your space, the things that you care about, and you look at an AI and you think about what it could do, there's a ton of possibility because this is such a new space, right? It's such a new tool.
Very greenfield.
And specifically, like the people who are like actually working in this field are largely academic. They're largely computer scientists. They're largely scientifically minded.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes the solutioning, and like I think if we look at like the first like big domain model that integrated with AI, I think is like really probably GitHub Copilot.
Yeah.
GitHub Copilot is obvious as a solution to someone who's a computer scientist.
Yeah, for those who don't know what that is or who don't work in software development, like, you know, Copilot came out roughly around the same time as 3.5, I feel like. Maybe, it was before ChatGPT even, actually.
Yeah, I think so.
It was probably the summer of that year. I think it was August or so. It became very quickly one of the most popular tools in every developer's tool belt. You know, like in software development, you have something called IntelliSense, which is like this thing where you press tab to complete something. And there's all this effort and work written around until it's working well. It's just like autocomplete. It's like it kind of knows what you're gonna. If you're writing out a letter or a word, or like you're saying period something else, accessing the property on an object, it'll know because of IntelliSense. It's like, obviously, you mean one of these four things, and you put the letter A, so it's one of these two things. So just choose with the arrow. Like great. Like that kind of functionality is really built into how our workflows are.
Yep.
This is like IntelliSense on like crack. You know, it's like, you know, hey, you typed in this name of the function. I got it. In this context of this entire file, you probably want to write this.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's cool because you can just write a comment like, hey, I need a function that does this. Like, integrate with the weather API to pull down the current weather in Idaho or in like California or something, right? And it'll like write an entire function calling some service that does this.
Yeah.
You may not want to call that service. You may incur some charges or open up yourself up for vulnerabilities.
It may not be written exactly like it too.
Yeah.
Or a lot of, you know, caveats here.
There's details, right?
Yeah. But it solves a lot of those issues and it saves you a lot of time. And you can just go in there and tweak it if you know what you're doing.
But, you know, so this is like an amazing tool, but it's an amazing tool for a computer scientist.
Yeah.
It's an amazing tool for a programmer. It's an amazing tool for somebody who kind of knows how to code, too. I would say somebody who's, like, interested in coding.
Or a very junior developer who, like, has some academic understanding and is trying to apply it.
Yeah.
It helps bridge that gap. Yeah.
And I think a lot of, like, the thinking and the knowledge and the understanding of this sort of space is largely geared at that. The other kind of major application that jumps out to me is really MidJourney.
Yeah.
And MidJourney is able to benefit from this, like, kind of how humans think. We really love like beauty. We really appreciate like visual aspects and aesthetics, and they're easy to read. Like you can look at an image and you can understand if you like it or not, right? Yeah. It's not very difficult to appreciate,
and it's very universal.
Yes,
like the aesthetic is something that I think most humans have some finger on the pulse of. You know, we can maybe not all agree on the fine details, but we can generally tell if a picture looks better than another picture. To some degree, we'll pick and we'll average and we'll say 9 out of 10 say this is better.
Yeah, exactly. And it's, and we could do golden ratio, we could do all these things, but that is an application that actually has like honed in on this sort of like creative artistic space over specific functionality, the way that like DALLE has evolved, right? DALLE is still a more academic focused tool than a MidJourney.
Yeah, MidJourney has a lot of stylistic opinions, I feel like, right? Yeah. And that's a good thing for what you're trying to do in that situation. It's saying, I know the golden ratio, I know what looks good, I know color contrasts that are really nice. Yeah. Even if you ask it to do certain things, it'll still try to do it in a way that you like. And of course, you can kind of modify that with like their style level, like configurations. You can say, I want it to be more styled or less styled. Yeah. But overall, it's just a beautiful experience. And we do struggle with this. We struggle with this overall in all of our AI like pieces. We've seen some controversy about the struggle as well too, with like the more recent stuff with like specifically with Gemini, and it's like, let's say, overcorrecting of cultural sensitivity. I'm going to be charitable and say it that way.
Yeah. We'll link something.
We don't
have to cover this.
Yeah, exactly. People have talked about this a lot already. Yeah. But like, what's interesting about that for me is it reflects our battle of how much do we want to be hands off and let it do its own thing. Yeah. Or how much do we want to be opinionated about it and tell it, hey, this is what's right, this is what's wrong, this is good, this is bad, this is aesthetic, this is unaesthetic. Yeah. And I think this is a challenge we'll grapple with for a while.
There reminds me of two things, and I'm not sure which one of these I want to dive into. One is sort of the, I guess like, what's it called? It's like cultural colonialism in a way, where we're sort of defining these AI models to be very sort of like Western thinking, Western understanding, North American to a large part. And kind of excluding a lot of like other inputs from other cultures. So that's one angle of this. The other angle I actually think about is like how we optimize these models. These models are like, you've told me about this, and I understand this like kind of broadly. So correct me where I'm wrong. But there's this idea of like, okay, so say we build like this massive large language model. We run it across our millions of users to see what's the most like beneficial or like helpful aspects of this tool. And then now that we've got this sort of like usage of the language model, we then pull out the nodes, the mental nodes that exist in the model to be able to say, cool, this model has now become more optimized, right? But that's assuming that everyone who uses the model has already used it in every way that model can be used. Right? So we have sort of like, we may pull out things and optimize away things so that the model can be faster, right?
Pruning is the term used.
Pruning, yes. So we're pruning the model down to, it's like, imagine you take somebody who's like they do logistics, right? They deliver packages. So they think their brain uses a lot of this like routing and navigation system, uses a lot of like visual identification of packages. It does really good kind of like lookups, simple math, stuff like that. But art isn't something that is appreciated in a way, right? They may appreciate scenery, but they may not actually think about like art and like meaning, right?
Or maybe the way they even think of art and meaning is intrinsically tied to the way they think about everything because of their underlying like job and their mechanics, right? Yeah. Very different than what we think of when we think of art because of some wires crossing our brain that just slightly deviate.
Yeah, but this is also an interesting like aspect though. So because there's only really like a subset of people that actually interface with these tools currently, right? I mean, ChatGPT is still early adoption. Like it's crazy. I mean, it's like it's had this massive adoption, millions of users, but it's still early adopter.
It's not TikTok.
It's not TikTok. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. But if you had the TikTok level adoption, right, you would get a much better idea of like a population usage, right, of this tool.
Global user base, literally billions of daily active users.
Yeah.
That gives you a pretty good subset of the human civilization across the world that you can probably say, great, we know what they like.
Yeah, and so I think like this sort of like pruning is like really interesting because, and it's a reason to like think about the tools differently and like encourage that different thinking because we sort of need that in a way at this stage. If we don't get it in now, we might not be able to get it in later.
Yeah,
in a way,
we might start to cut out certain pieces that we don't realize in the future will be integral to our actual ability to use these things well. I mean, like to start to move on because I feel like we talked this forever.
Yeah. We could go.
Yeah.
Definitely a rabbit trail level topic.
I think what this is bringing me to though, as a segue, is that a lot of what's happening now is we've started stabilizing to some degree the space. The space was very chaotic last year.
Yeah.
It was. GPT-4 came out last year. Came out in March of last year. So many other things on top of that, like MidJourney 5 and 6. Claude from Anthropic. You can go on and on and on and on about things that happened. And it was a lot of like anxiety and like legal battles were starting. Some have already ended. To like a whimper, no fanfare.
Yeah.
Like there's the recent stuff that came out of like I think it was Sarah Silverman's case particularly and others, but I remember her particularly because she's famous. Mostly throwing out that case. There's a little bit that they have an opportunity for, but like increasingly, maybe one case will be won by people who are fighting against AI companies, but it seems like the majority are not going to be.
Right.
So that's kind of people are kind of moving on from that intellectually and mentally. They're like, okay, well, I guess these are things that are here to stay. So what happens next?
Right.
And this is happening across the sphere now. We're seeing that really with Sora. Let's talk about Sora real quick.
Sure. Yeah, let's go into that.
I think Sora is a good example of why it's so important to have a good idea before you make before you marry to anything.
Right.
As to what is important.
Right.
Like generating a video. For those who don't know what Sora is, I assume people who watch this might know what it is, but let's kind of go over it.
Yeah.
So OpenAI has a new model.
Talk about it. I'll bring it up.
Cool. OpenAI has a new model. It's called Sora. So Sora is fascinating. It's an image. Let's call it image model, but it's really video. It works as both. You can say make me an image, and it's basically one frame of video, or it can make you probably the best text to video I've seen. Not probably the best, absolutely the best text to video I've seen so far. Very very good looking stuff. I
will not be able to. I do not have permissions on this laptop, so
fair enough.
That's fine.
I'll do it on mine. Yeah, like it's just absolutely just. Here, I'll share.
No worries.
And it'll be in the background so people can see what's going on. This is OpenAI's official video where they kind of show some examples, and you can all see what we see.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the overall quality of this is far and beyond everything else I've seen. One thing I did actually is I went to the VFX subreddit on Reddit when this came out. They're having a collective existential crisis, deep crisis.
Oh, I bet. Oh, about Sora specifically.
Yeah. Because like some of this stuff is like some people can get very over the top about this and say movies are all gone next year or whatever it is. No, probably not for a while. Yeah, who knows how long? I can't make any predictions, and I won't make any predictions.
Yeah.
But we don't need to go crazy. Even from what we see today, though, things like B-roll footage, like you can see in these examples, probably are going to be challenged. Yeah. Things like, like commercial stuff here and there, potentially challenged. These are careers and jobs that are probably going to really, if not even get removed, fundamentally change in the next little while.
Yeah.
Because if it takes you a half an hour and $2 to generate, let's say 5 minutes of video or like whatever amount, Sora can do 1 minute video concurrently in a row before I think it gets wonky. Yeah. That's quite a bit of video. Think of every cut you've done in a video or you've seen in a movie or anything like that. Yeah. 1 minute straight is quite impressive. Yeah. With some creativity, you can probably make a full, let's say commercial for sure. They're only 30 seconds. Right? Yeah. But you can do all kinds of stuff that are maybe multiple minutes if you really wanted to. Maybe a 10-minute movie, like a short, who knows what.
I mean, stuff like this too. I mean, like you have these like effects that could potentially repeat, could loop.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, yeah, when you're talking about B-roll footage, it's also like, I mean, you see a lot of like short film stuff where it's like shots from space and shots from these sort of like abstract things while a story is sort of being told over the top.
Yeah.
There's a really good video. I don't know how to reference it, but effectively this guy talks about how a lot of like VFX stuff is made, and it's really like it's all like facades. None of it's real. Like they kind of like take like footage of like real places. Like they go and take a photo of some place, and then they quickly like mock it into some 3D space, and then they build this like scene, and then they just play it, and like you spend all this time kind of building these like prop scenes that are sort of built from the real world in order to just get something working.
Yeah.
Right. And I think like the other thing I'm thinking about when it comes to this is like, yeah, there's an art to being able to do that, and yeah, when you want like that fine-grained creative control, which some directors need and some like messages need, you can still have that. But when you don't need fine-grained control, this works.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I think that's the first use case.
Yeah. When
you don't need the control, it's gonna be an easy and quick solution because the turnaround is a great one.
Yeah.
If you are a developer, this is in our mindset, and you have the option between like, or let's say somebody making an app, and you have the option of getting a turnaround on a page that you can see in 5 minutes versus one you see in a week, and they're close to equal. And the price is significantly cheaper, it's no question. You're going to say, give me 5 minutes. Yeah. I can do 20 iterations in a day, 100 iterations in a day, depending on how long I want to work, right? And be like, you know what? Of these like 100 that I've seen, I like 10 the most, let's do it. Yeah. That's not even an option you have with something that's like a week-long turnaround or multi-day work turnaround. You can't wait 100 weeks for like one scene.
And I think the other thing that I think is like really interesting from like a I don't know economic perspective in a way is like we've actually changed how we think about media. The way that we perceive media, we used to perceive media that it was like always a value add. You would sell a show and that show would be worth some amount, but now it's actually based on audience. Everything has changed to be audience based. Do you have an audience? Can you keep an audience, right? And like attention matters. Like if you look at streaming, the way streaming works now, a show is successful if people watched it. Yeah. All the shows are on Netflix. Like, you don't get paid just to be on Netflix. You get paid if you get watched on Netflix. Yeah. You get paid if you get watched on YouTube, right? And I think the thing that's interesting about the ability for us to use something like Sora or like kind of change this game is it's like, okay, it's much easier to build something that is nice looking and could grasp attention. But that's going to change how people get attention.
This is going back to your point that I segued in here from, like whoever can, like this is like cultural like milestones are being created right now in this moment. The model you make is going to inform everything going forward. Yeah. If your model, for example, is going to show slightly more of a certain kind of looking person than another kind of person, that's going to have a subtle impact in the world. So I can appreciate to some degree why all these companies are being so hyper nervous and cautious about like representation and all that kind of stuff. But even if we go beyond like the cultural, like let's say the cultural war part of this, just the core intellectual part of this, what power is being created right now? Like such significant power. You are creating tools that will probably generate more content in probably not now, but in a couple of years, more content in a year than we have ever like more video than we've ever generated in our lifetimes, because it can just like churn them out so. Faster than real time.
That's already happening. I mean, that's already happened with me with AI image generation for sure. Like, if you took every piece of art that I ever made as a kid, I have probably generated more images than that typing now. Yeah, you know, exactly. And like, I still draw. I still like drawing. I think it's still a good tool. And like, I mean, that's the other thing is like expression of self or self-expression or like the ability for you to like plan or think or evolve. From a like a place or a setting, these are just tools, you know, and I think that's the weird like scary thing, and it goes into like sort of like the reasons people are upset about Gemini as well. But it's like these are tools that don't have like the ability to self-regulate or self-think.
No agency really. We'll get on agents at the very end of this.
Yeah, we'll get on agents at the end.
But yeah, like, they don't have any of that, right?
Yeah.
But they have, like, a good example is the MidJourney. They have a subtle stylistic bend.
Yes.
Right? If you are making, and this is the nice thing, some people will have so much more power to be creative in some ways.
Yeah.
If you want to make, eventually you'll be able to make entire 3D scenes instead of things like, let's say, the equivalent of, if not actually Unreal Engine 5.
Yeah.
You make a whole scene that's a beautiful forest with trees and tropical plants and birds flying around. Depending on the model you use, the exact same prompt will give you different versions of that, right?
Right, yeah.
Whatever is the most popular one is going to be a part of the zeitgeist of the cultural experience for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So it's good to, number one, support high diversity, I feel like.
Yeah. Do you remember that, like, there was like a show, I can't remember what show it is, but there's it's all these like 3D assets, and they kind of like, they would set them up in prop scenes. I feel like it was like coded or something. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I don't know how to even reference this, but I just remember there at one point was like these 3D characters, and they all look like it's like this like terrible 2000s kids show. They're like 3D animated. They're not the best, but they kind of communicate, and they all read
kind
in
like
a
this
very
3D
robotic.
kid show.
A little bit like that. Yeah, a little bit like that. It's like worse though. Way worse.
Yeah,
worse. Like take the Polycon count down a lot.
Like one hundredth of that. Yeah.
But like I think we've already had some of this. Like that's also the other thing is like we've already had some of these like just like give me something that I can present. And I don't really care what it looks like.
Yeah, like here's a toolbox of like 20 different models.
Yeah.
That are pretty models and 10 different backdrops.
Yeah.
Make a whole show with this. And people can do that.
Yeah.
People can be very creative with that. Constraint in its own way is very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And this is kind of constraint, but also kind of like no constraint combined.
Yeah.
You're constrained by the stylistic implementation of the model you're using, but you're unconstrained in the fact that your skill is almost irrelevant to the ability of you to create.
Yeah.
It takes some skill to, of course, think of a good scene, to think of good like ideas. That's kind of its own skill, but not like physical artistic skill. Yeah. Not like model generation skill. Not understanding the tool like Maya or like Blender. You don't need to do any of this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
What does that mean for the culture of the future? What does that mean for how we all interact with each other?
Yeah.
Fascinating questions that we should all be asking ourselves, I think, to some degree. And this is why I struggle. Do you try to talk to people about this? And I don't do as much anymore. People are very, very, very emotionally challenged by this stuff.
Yeah.
And I understand. I completely understand. I'm not even judging them.
Me too.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I'm emotionally challenged by this stuff as well too.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult to kind of think about this like future we're building.
Yeah.
But it's important we do, rather than kind of like trying to hide away and hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think there's some people that just won't talk about it.
Yeah.
I think that's always kind of like part of it. I think, and I think that it also feels a lot like blockchain right now. Still, like there's still this weird era of like, is this going to stay? How is it going to stay? How is it going to continue? There's all this money being thrown around right now. It's like very Silicon Valley bubble feeling, and that's kind of scary in its own right too.
Yeah.
And so I think there's that aspect, but there's also a lot of just like misinformation in a way too. I remember reading this thing and they were talking about the new Tom Cruise Top Gun. And like in that movie, like it's kind of like the pilots against the automated pilots, right? And President Biden at one point like commented kind of like about that movie and his AI policy in the same breath. And it was sort of like weird because it's like, I mean, it's a movie and it's not really about replacing people, but there's still this like perception of like how it is or will change. But the thing just kind of like in our conversation just now even that I'm thinking about is like there's a massive power shift. Previously, if you wanted to build like a massive high budget movie, you needed to be a movie studio, right? The people who can now communicate a message has changed, right? And that's printing press, that changed.
That's the internet.
It's the internet, yeah.
And the pros and cons to literally everything in life, of course, right? And I think human nature is, of course, looking at the cons constantly.
Yeah.
But a power shift has pros and cons to it.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, like the power shift of like moving things away from controlled, isolated like powers. People who have the money to afford to make big movies. People who have the influence and connections to be able to get the right actors and whatever it may be. All of that is power, soft and hard. Right. And now we're creating tools that allow people of all walks. Yeah, imagine you're a small studio in like you know what's really great? Every once in a while, there's these small studios in Africa that will make movies. Sure, like they're making their own like Hollywood version.
Yeah.
And they're so low budget. Yeah. But they're weirdly great. Some of them. Yeah. Like they have great acting in it. Yeah. Great emphasis and like a completely different cultural touch. Yeah. That's kind of refreshing. Yeah. I would love to see more of that. Yeah. And maybe these tools can actually provide that. Yeah. As long as they're not too oppressive in their own stylistic intent. Yeah. Or maybe you can fine tune them to be more culturally relevant to other groups. True. Who knows what we'll do? Yeah. That'll be amazing. If suddenly you can watch a movie from middle of like, you know, Zimbabwe. Yeah. And have it real time translate because that's where we're going.
That's the other thing. Yeah. I think also the ability for us to communicate across cultures is like going to become significantly better. Yeah. Right. For us to be able to understand very clearly, like, oh, this is a phrase or euphemism or something, like, you know, being able to pull those things out and understand them too, I think would be really great. I really love, like, I don't know if you've ever read like a Kindle book. Sometimes you're reading the book and then you can like highlight a character and it'll actually tell you who that character was. It's like an X-ray. Yeah. And they do that same thing with like Prime Video and stuff like that too.
You pause it and they'll just tell you who's on the screen right now, who's on the screen right now. This person who used to be in these movies or some little bio information about them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just imagining like, okay, like what's that, you know, expanded. Yeah. Right. Imagine you can do that with anything, right? Like, hey, I'm in the middle of this conversation. I had to step away for a bit. Catch me up. Yeah. Like, you know.
Like, back to another point you said, like, the more powerful these things get, you know, it's not that we have less power. We actually have more power. And it's almost overwhelming. Yeah. You can make all kinds of new things, experiences, tools, apps, and things that are not viable now but are out. Are something more viable. And this is my segue into one topic before we go into agents that I think we were talking about earlier. Okay. Vision Pro.
Vision Pro. Yep.
So I want to just bring this up because I feel like the Vision Pro, if you don't know what this is, you can look it up. It's Apple's newest like product. It's basically a wearable but for your head. VR headset, AR headset, XR headset. Yep. VR is virtual reality, AR is augmented reality, XR is mixed reality. All of these kind of mean the same ballpark thing. They're different subsets of that. This idea of like being able to see the world, or not see the world, but see virtual things in your visual screen. Virtual reality, no real world. Augmented reality is generally the idea, this is kind of finicky, but like putting things in that are not touching the real world or not aware of it, but like in front of your face. Like here's a screen there, but I can see the real world around that. Right. And then you have mixed reality, where it actually integrates into the world. You put a screen actually, and it sticks to your fridge. It's digitally there, but it's actually, it knows your fridge, it knows your environment. It knows how it's slammed, which is simultaneous location and mapping your environment around you, so it kind of has contextual awareness of what's going on. Right. So many cool things you can do with all this stuff. Problem is, smarts aren't there. Yeah. You know, it's not smart enough to know what to do. That's a chair, or that's a table. It's not really good at this stuff. Right. But to your point, like Gemini, for example, to your point about other AI models that are coming out, 3D model generation being something you can just speak to creation soon. Yeah. This creates all the pieces you need to make those experiences actually quite powerful and profound. But what does that mean for the human experience in like a couple of years? Right. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not a year from now, but I'm getting old, and a year goes by like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
it's 2024. I'm like, I thought.
True. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's also really interesting from a like a what you can build perspective, like with all of this, because I think one thing that's interesting is like now that we have AI that could be multimodal, that could understand video streams and like aspects of video. Imagine like, I don't know, you wanted to have like a baby monitor, right? And you could actually kind of like check intermittently throughout the night how was your baby sleeping?
Yeah.
Right?
You can just ask it.
You could just ask it, right? And it could actually generate like statistics about like how much movement, you know, you're moving throughout the night.
Here's a report, screenshots of your baby sleeping on his belly for a little bit long from this time to this time. whatever you want to know,
Right.
anything you want to know.
And you know, you could I mean, like, because there's two aspects of that. One is like, I can take this very non-structured image and compare it against other images in order to be able to understand something like difficult to understand, right? Which is like, okay, what's changing throughout this space, or how are, you know, image to image, something kind of complex, right? Like, how much movement was there, right? And if you can kind of get that through, then you can generate a report based on that. And that could even be like programmatic. That doesn't necessarily have to be an LLM, or an LLM could like generate the kind of nuts and bolts to get a report later.
And that
right?
it could generate the script to programmatically generate the report.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many different ways to attack this thing. And like, I just think about this, it gets me overwhelmed in my own little way. It's like it's analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
It's like, which way do you do this? Do you do it through pure LLM? Do you do it through an LLM that makes a script? Do you do it to a script that an LLM can read and understand and tweak if it needs to, and pass in different parameters depending on the situation? Like, there's so many different things you can do here.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's like that's the new space. And it's weird because those solutions existed. Like, we kind of had this like last 10 years of like AI, you know, coding, and you had like the ability for image recognition and like these different tools, and like, so these, like, some of these people have like already built out a lot of these tools. But now with multimodal, it's like, wait, but you could say it's easy.
Yeah.
you know, it's like easier now. So it's like, okay, crap. What does that mean?
This happened with language. We remember the meeting we had, and I asked this question so there's a group in the city. There's groups everywhere in the world now where people talk about AI in a more technical sense. And one session we were having, one of these groups, we went out, we did a meetup with them, was about the change in natural language processing. NLP is its own field in AI. It's been around for a long time, 20 years. Things like summarization is its own subset of that field. Things like entity recognition. So you give it a document, and it's like, find me all the people in there. It's like, cool, here are all the people in there. Here are all the animals and whatever it is, right? It to give you that information. And there's tons of different subsets of that. What's the sentiment of this? This is a happy thing. This is a sad thing. On a scale from 1 to 10, it's 7 happy, whatever it is, right? Language models kind of like kick that entire field in the butt. They were like, you don't need to have 10 subsets of this field. You have the LLM field, and that's it. It can do it all at once. I literally asked an LLM to literally take this document, give me all the entities inside of there, give me all the sentiments of them, give me summarizations of what they're doing, and give me whatever, right? Yeah. Cool, here it is for you in a JSON object if you like. Incredibly powerful. And we're doing that now for video and for audio. And then we're going to do that for more modalities, things that we don't even touch. Probably like point clouds with LiDAR. Probably like Gaussian splatter. You know, tons of these different things that are going to be part of this modality. And then they're going to have better integrations across modalities. Audio with video at the same time. That kind of stuff. Every single step along the way, we're kind of compounding the complexity in a way that opens up 1,000 doors. And those doors each now are going to open up their own 1,000 doors. So to encourage the world out there, if you're like, I have an AI idea, go do something about it. Go like practice. It's getting easier. Talk to GPT-4 and be like, hey, I have an AI idea. How do I do this? Talk to Gemini, Ultra. Hopefully 1.5 comes out soon. It's a little better, so hopefully it'll be better at giving you those answers.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, and I think that's the interesting thing is like, also from like an AI implementation perspective, it's like, think about the end state and work back. I think that's the best way to do it at this point, because the way that we focused on engineering so much oftentimes is you focus on like the details, right? You focus on like the small pieces, and then you think about how the small pieces could build together to build the entire thing. But with AI and sort of like building like AI first tooling, which is sort of like this era that we're in now, you're thinking with like, okay, like, well, what's the end state I want? Okay, now what's a path that gets there? And if you have that and you can like keep that from that perspective, and then something changes, you can have a more grounded way of making changes to that in the future. Yeah. Because like, I mean, we've built stuff. Like I built a lot of different stuff with LangChain. I built a lot of different stuff with AI. And like the small pieces never really get reused. Like it's kind of like, they go obsolete very quickly.
Yeah, especially in this field right now where like everything is nascent. Everything is brand new.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to be the same because we're going to learn from every experience. But like that was a terrible idea. Oh, and suddenly also a new model came out. It's multimodal. We need to have multimodality as a part of the flow and the explanations of how we do things. Yeah.
Yeah. So like really, it's like okay, the problem solving from a orchestration of a system matters a lot more than like the specific details of like how do I parse a PDF.
Yeah, that should be composable. Those should be pieces that are part of your whole story. That if you can pop one out and put something else new to do it for you, you should be able to kind of write it that way. Yeah,
exactly. So I think to wrap it all up, let's talk about agents.
Yes.
Because I think that's the final kind of piece here.
Yeah.
And then we'll let everyone go because we're getting.
So let me pull up the information article. The information. Agents, OpenAI. So,
while you pull that up, maybe I can just talk about like what agents are.
Yes.
So, right now, the way that chat systems are used and like AI systems are used in general is they're very input-output, one input to one output. So you say, hey, I've got a question. I'm going to ask about something, and here's some maybe relevant data. It will then use this sort of like AI system. It may go on your behalf and make a query. It may do a few things in that one context, right? In that one response. So it's sort of like, yeah, it may go and, I don't know, talk to Travelocity and get some, travel options for you. Or it may go and do a Bing search or a Google search. Or it may go and generate an image and come back, right? So it's very like single purpose driven and single query based. That's sort of like the way things are right now. But the way things are kind of like moving when we start thinking about agents are entities that act and perform jobs on our behalf. And they do it in such a way that it is, you have the subscribe article. Oh, we're not subscribed. Ouch.
Yeah, the information is expensive.
Oh yeah.
It's like $500 a year.
Fair enough.
But it's fine. You'll see it. You can see it a little bit here.
Yeah. Effectively, the cool thing about agents, because they run on their own, they are able to sort of like perform jobs on our behalf. So you could imagine like you could task it with making a reservation. So to make a reservation, it may use something like OpenTable, but it needs to sort of like find the reservations that are available, find things that are in your calendar that might match, find times, ask you about those times. Then when you give it the times that you want, it then has to go back, book it, validate that it booked it. Like there's a multiple step process here that's fairly extensive.
Yeah, and have lots of potential paths depending on like being reactive to what is being kind of thrown in the wrench. So what wrenches are being thrown in the works rather.
Yeah.
You have to be able to roll with the punches.
Yeah, and agents exist right now. I mean, there are some models that exist to like create agents. And I think when people think about AI, they actually think about agents. Like I don't think they dumb it down to the other one.
Yeah,
which is like
single inference, like output of text or image, whatever it may be.
Or
right?
image, where it does like one thing and then it kind of comes back, and like that's what like I think 99.9% of people are doing.
Yeah.
Right. But the agents that sort of exist today are very rough.
Yeah.
They
kind of just wrap LLMs mostly.
Yeah, they wrap LLMs, and they're often very error prone too. So they can get kind of caught up on like one issue. They can get stuck in loops. They can hit error states very easily. And so it's kind of hard out there for somebody building agents.
Let me read the information's quick snippet that they were willing to share with us. They often don't have much more than this anyway, but it's good enough to give you an idea.
Yeah.
The information is an insider kind of like source of news. In Silicon Valley, they've almost consistently had correct information about leaks ahead of time, so it's good to kind of like have your finger on their pulse. OpenAI's first major product, ChatGPT, proved so popular that it sparked a generation of wannabes. But as rivals like Google catch up, OpenAI is hustling to release a product that could prove almost as revolutionary. OpenAI is developing a form of agent software to automate complex tasks by effectively taking over a customer's device. The customer could then ask the ChatGPT agent to transfer data from a document to a spreadsheet for analysis, for instance, or to automatically fill out expense reports and enter them into the accounting software. Those kinds of requests would trigger the agent to perform the clicks, cursor movements, text typing, and other actions humans take as they work with different apps, according to a person with knowledge of the effort. So Yeah, to Ben's point, basically, not just one thing, but being able to like do multiple things, and in this case specifically, also have more of this like device level control,
Right.
which is in and of itself very, very powerful. They talked about this a little while ago too. They talked about this I think last year, early last year, that OpenAI was hiring tons of people. I think it was like thousands of people to come in and just use software so they could record it. Go use computer, do these tasks for us, and they're recording not just the clicks, but like the behind the scenes actions that are happening, the JSON objects that are being passed around to different services, all these different things that kind of like orchestrate the computer's connection to not just itself, because computers connect to itself and the apps inside of itself, but also to external apps and stuff like that.
Right.
So they're using that because they need that to train these models, fine tune them, or make a new model. Who knows what? I don't know if this is going to be a 4.5 situation, or this is going to be a brand new 5.0 model.
Right.
I think overall what's going to happen is that we're going to see some kind of agentic stuff this year. Maybe not right away, maybe not until summer, maybe not until end of the year.
Right.
But for all we know and for how fast things move, maybe this is literally tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Fair.
But Monday, here are our agents. Who knows what?
Yeah.
As the space is getting competitive, like Sora video came out an hour after 1.5 of Gemini feature came out.
Yeah.
I don't think that was an accident.
No.
No. They're competing for mind share. And as the quality of all these things improve, they kind of hit this sort of like minimum level of threshold of usability that makes this a very, very competitive space.
Yeah.
So if agents come out, I'm going to give you one example of an agent saying this I think would be very, very powerful for a non-software developer, just so I can think outside the box, and then I want you to do one too.
Okay.
Okay. So a good example. So one thing that happens very often for people is they need to plan like a trip somewhere. Let's say it's a work trip even. I need to go to, I don't know, Colorado for a work trip. I hate doing all the stuff like putting in my information to actually like pick a hotel, take my flight. I know what my hours, what I want to do, but I don't go click around, find the right flight, whatever it is, find the best price for that flight. Like deal with the hotel booking, deal with the flight from the trip from the hotel to the airport to the hotel and vice versa. And then maybe let's say I want to do for drinks, or maybe I want to go out and explore Colorado. I want to go to the mountains. I don't know. I gotta look up like tour guides or all this stuff. Imagine if I was like, okay, here's my schedule. This is what I have to do. I'm going to a conference and I'm doing a work meeting. But outside of that, I want to do other things. I need to go use I don't know, whatever airline that my company says is okay. Can you go deal with all of that for me? And when you have a good plan for me, including what I can do outside of it, work, come back. And it comes back and says, cool, yeah, here you go. Here's some flights. Here's some options. Here's the best prices. Here's I already lined up and almost booked all the things you need to do afterwards, like the trip to the hotel and back. Here's a good agency for the trips. They do stuff that you like. I know you like because now I have more data about you as a person. And press this button or these 4 buttons, and then it'll all be done for you.
Right.
I think that's a kind of contrived example, of course. And there's probably simpler things out there that we can do.
I mean, honestly, anything that you book feels like this would be amazingly helpful.
Yeah.
Right? Have something that goes out and does research for you on behalf of some activity, right?
Yeah.
I find I very seriously considered building something like this early on because it was it's such a very specific thing. And especially how you travel really matters too. So it's for instance, the best places to go, right? The places that you need reservations. There's sort of the thing that everyone likes, and then there's usually the things that sort of you value. So I really am somebody who values quiet spaces. I just like quiet.
Maybe a nice view, a nice atmosphere, something that kind of slows you down, right? Yeah.
Yep. And other people really enjoy having a very rambunctious party kind of atmosphere.
You
right?
catch me at every disco night at the dance places in the city. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there's a lot of customization that needs to happen in that space. So I find an agent that's general often won't hit the mark, but I think it's still, even if you just gave it the broad strokes, that would be amazingly helpful. So I'll give you mine. I'm thinking imagine there's somebody that you want to impress, right? Say it could be your girlfriend's family, it could be your boss, it could be just somebody that you aspire to want to get close to, right? In a way, you could have it come up with sort of like a dossier of like interests or activities or things that this person likes.
Yeah.
You could give it access to like your Instagram feed or your social media or your LinkedIn. Pull in information about that person, about like sort of like the things that they like or the things that they appreciate, and kind of build an idea of what might be a good gift, what might be an interesting,
topic to talk to them about
topic to
over
talk to
dinner.
them about. Yeah, exactly. Or unknown connections that you didn't know you had, right? I mean, I think most social media ends up usually trying to do that.
Yeah.
But as somebody who like doesn't use Twitter, sometimes it's like I miss things, or like people just kind of like don't know.
Yeah.
And I know people who don't have LinkedIn either, right? And so it's like professionally, it's sort of like weird at times to like connect with those people. But yeah, I mean, I find that entire space is now fairly unique. So I think that might be something that would be interesting for an agent to be able to do. And it's sort of like what if like say you're a power CEO, that's
your secretary.
That is your secretary's job.
Yeah.
Just like find out what kind of scotch they like and buy them a bottle, right? Yeah. That's like the Mad Men kind of, thing.
Exactly. Yeah. But like that's a very powerful and this is part of like I think what people have been trying to make with models, or at least kind of communicate. Yeah. And this is what Her is really. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Her is the ultimate agent. I don't think we'll have Her. No. Her is a good movie. It came out 10 years ago, last month.
I still need to rewatch it. I've been like meaning to.
I'm going to make a watch party. I'll invite you to it. I'm planning that. I was telling you earlier, my partner. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to do a Her watch party. It's a 10-year anniversary. Yeah. It's already passed technically a couple of weeks ago, but it's fine. It's a great time to do it, especially considering everything that's happened in the last 10 years, in the last like 2 years. Yeah, I think that'll be a really, really fascinating experience.
Yeah, I think so too.
Regardless. Yeah, like this is what we've been trying to make. And I don't think we'll get there with the next step. Yeah. But we're going to be stepping towards it.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Cool. Yeah. Cool. I think that kind of wraps up the history of things. I know it's another whirlwind session, as usual. But thanks for tuning in and listening to us ramble on about AI. I'm sure next time we're going to have more kind of concise focus. Or not.
We'll see what people like. We'll see we'll go with the flow. Yeah. We're loosey-goosey here.
Yeah. If there's something that you did like or something that you appreciate us talking about, please
let us know.
Let us know. We would love that.
Maybe next time we'll have an AI guest talking with us.
That would be cool. Yeah. Oh, man.
Nah. No, not yet.
We got our dog.
We got a dog.
Yeah.
He finally passed out.
Yeah, he finally passed out. No comment from him. So, oh well. But yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Catch you later.
See ya.